Nice to see you. We have a little longer reading, a series of readings today. We're in chapter 6, verses 30 through 56. But they all sort of work together because the word that I'd like you to think about is the word miracle. We'll start with the story of the loaves of fishes, then we'll go on to the story of Jesus walking across the water, and finally we'll end up with the story of Jesus healing people in Gennesaret, which is a little town on the other side of the Sea of Galilee across from Bethsaida. So I'll read. You read along if you like, or just listen along. Then we'll talk about miracles. The apostles gathered around Jesus and told him all they had done and taught. And he said to them, "Come away to a deserted place by yourselves and rest a while." For many were coming and going, and they had no leisure even to eat. And they went away to the boat, in the boat to a deserted place by themselves. Now many saw them going and recognized them, and they hurried there on foot from all the towns and arrived ahead of them. As Jesus went ashore, he saw the great crowd, and he had compassion for them, because they were like sheep without a shepherd. And he began to teach them many things. When it grew late, his disciples came to him and said, "This is a deserted place, and the hour is now very late. Send them away, so that they may go into the surrounding country and villages and buy something for themselves to eat." But Jesus answered them, "You give them something to eat." They said to him, "Are we to go and buy 200 denarii worth of bread and give it to them to eat?" And he said to them, "How many loaves have you? Go see." When they had found out, they said 5 and 2 fish. Then he ordered them to get all the people to sit down in groups on the green grass. So they sat down in groups of hundreds and fifties. Taking the 5 loaves and the 2 fish, he looked up to heaven and blessed and broke the loaves and gave them to the disciples to set before the people. And he divided the 2 fish among them all. And all ate and were filled. And they took up 12 baskets full of broken pieces of the fish. Those who had eaten the loaves numbered 5,000 men. Immediately Jesus made his disciples get into a boat and go ahead to the other side, to Bethsaida, while he dismissed the crowd. After saying farewell to them, he went up on the mountain to pray. When evening came, the boat was out on the sea, and he was alone on the land. When he saw that they were straining at the oars against an adverse wind, he came towards them early in the morning, walking on the sea. He intended to pass by, but when they saw him walking on the sea, they thought it was a ghost, and they cried out, for they all saw him and were terrified, but immediately spoke to them, and he said, "Take heart, it is I, do not be afraid." Then he got into the boat with them, and the wind ceased, and they were utterly astounded, for they did not understand about the loaves, but their hearts were hardened. When they had crossed over, they came to the land of Gennesaret and moored the boat. When they got out of the boat, people at once recognized Jesus, and they rushed about the whole region and began to bring the sick on mats or whatever to wherever they heard that he was. And wherever he went, into villages or cities or farms, they laid the sick in the marketplace, and they begged him that he might touch even the fringe. They might touch even the fringe of his cloak. And all who touched it were healed. And so there we have quite a long reading. It's an interesting reading. It's about miracles. Jesus, the disciples, they needed a rest after all the ministry they were doing. They were exhausted. They got in a boat. They went to a deserted place. The people saw them. They ran around on the land so they could be with him. People want to be with Jesus. And so they came, and he sat, and he taught. And in the evening, they were hungry. And so he said, "What do we have?" 5 loaves and 2 fish. And Jesus took those and he multiplied them and he multiplied them and he multiplied them. So you may remember the Old Testament story of Moses. These groupings of 150 where people were gathered together, something that Moses did with the people of Israel. So this is a reflection to those that are reading this text, that this is going to in some way reflect the power of God to care for God's people. Now in the Old Testament, in the book of Exodus, we see this as the manna in the wilderness. God provided. We have a reflection of this again, God providing through Jesus. How did Jesus do it? I don't know. How did Jesus sort of multiply the molecules to make them? I don't know. Was that a miracle because he was God? Maybe, or maybe it's just something he knew how to do. He didn't come here to teach us how to do that. That wasn't the point. But it was something that needed to happen in the moment, and so he fed them. And then he sent the disciples off because that crowd was big and was drawing attention, and he needed to move his folks out. And then he moved the people out, and then he moved himself up into a mountain where he could pray. And the disciples headed in the boat back to Bethsaida. But they struggled, right? And Jesus saw their struggle. And he went out to see what was going on, and then he was going to go by them, right? He was on his way. He was on his way to lead or to go to Gennesaret to take the message. And they saw him, and they were startled because they weren't used to seeing a person walking on water. Is this a miracle? Maybe, or maybe it's just Jesus understanding how molecules work in relationship to one another. I don't know. It could almost be the same miracle as multiplying out the loaves and the fishes. But Jesus knew what he was doing. He knew how to walk on water. And he stopped and he went to them and he said, do not be afraid. That's mission critical. Whatever you see in your life, whatever miracle startles you, do not be afraid. So the thing that's interesting about miracles is often they're just one person's capacity to do something that other people don't understand. Right? It's a miracle maybe that you can well, from my point of view, read a foreign language. I can't read a foreign language. That's magic as far as I'm concerned. Or put in a new hip, right? Or throw a football 50 yards, right? These are all things that God gives us the capacity to do. And we are not put on the earth to understand other people's miracles or to worship them, but to use them for the benefit of others, like Jesus did, right? He stopped and he helped the folks in the boat. He stopped and he helped all the people in Gennesaret. And you see, it's very interesting. It says here in verse 51 and 52, then Jesus got into the boat with him, the wind ceased, and they were utterly confounded, and they did not understand about the loaves. Right? They didn't understand the presence and the abundance of God. That's what miracles do. And my invitation to you is to look for miracles today, because today's your look for a miracle, something that you just don't understand, and open your heart to the reality that it's a miracle, right? That there's a giftedness that's represented in somebody you come across that is calling your attention to relationship with one another and relationship with God. That is what miracles do. They reconnect. They bind together relationships. And so those are the miracles. Jesus, every miracle he does is recreating something, right? Bringing it back to its fullness and wholeness. Use your miracle gifts to bring things to fullness and wholeness. Witness miracles as people bring things to fullness and wholeness. I'm glad to be with you. Thank you for joining me. And peace upon your soul.